Have you ever dreamt of taking a cruise all the way around the world?
Well, if you have, you are in luck. Today we're going to be talking about World Cruises 2023. Hi, my name is Iris and I run the blog lifeofiris.com where we talk about cruises, crew life, and travel. So today we're talking about World Cruises 2023. We're going to go through what makes a world cruise, as well as the different cruise lines that are offering world cruises, what those itineraries look like, some of the perks of taking a world cruise, as well as some things to look out for. So come along while we explore the world. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what makes a world cruise a world cruise. Well, truthfully, it's really just a designation that a specific voyage has from whatever that cruise line is. There are cruises that are typically at least 3 months long. They often will circumnavigate the globe, or they will at least go a good way around the world. If they aren't going quite a ways around the world, they're going to explore a few different regions very in depth. So there's a variety, as you'll see as we go through these itineraries, of what a world cruise really looks like. If you really want to do a full circumnavigation of the globe, start in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, go all the way around and end up in Florida, and 4 months later, you have that option. There's a wide variety of itineraries that are available and in a wide variety of lengths and prices. So the next most common question with world cruises is how long are they? So the ones that we're going to be talking about here range from 80 days all the way up to 180 days. So we're looking at just under 3 months to a full 6 months at sea. Now, if that also sounds far too long for you, but you're interested in seeing a certain part of the world that you notice on some of these itineraries, there are things called segments. And so some of these itineraries are able to be done just a part of that itinerary. So not all cruise lines offer this, but if there's something that you see that you go, oh my goodness, I've always wanted to explore that part of Asia, it's on this particular cruise, I think maybe I want to do 3 weeks or a month, it's possible that that's available as a segment for you to do. So it's not available on all itineraries, but there are a few that offer that. All right, the next question that gets asked is how much does a world cruise cost? And just as there's a very wide range for the itineraries as well as the length of a world cruise, there is a very wide range for how much a world cruise costs. The itineraries we're going to discuss today range from $15,000 per person up to starting at $50,000 or $60,000 per person, and could easily go well over $100,000. So there's a big range in how much a world cruise can cost. The cruises that start at a higher price point typically include more. They might include drinks while you're on board, shore excursions, they might include airfare. The entire ship might be suites. There might be no inside staterooms on any of the ships, whereas a world cruise starting at $15,000 is more likely going to be in an inside cabin. You might not have alcoholic beverages included, or it might cost more to go to a specialty restaurant. So within that range, there's also a range in what's included on board your ship. So keep all of that in mind. I'm going to leave all sorts of links in the description for this video. So if you see one itinerary and you want more information, there's going to be a link in there. I'll also link to a blog post that I've done about this. So lots of information to be had. Before we get going on these itineraries, I would like to say that world cruises do sell out quickly. So it is possible a good chunk of these itineraries are already sold out. If you are interested, I would recommend contacting the cruise line. Sometimes they will make a waiting list, and then with the waiting list, if there is one, when it comes time to pay the full, to pay for the cruise in full, so they make the deposit, and then later on you pay for the cruise, often that's when there's movement on that waiting list, is when people go, oh, this actually doesn't either fit with their budget or their life schedule, or something has happened in the year from when they initially put that deposit down to when the ship is going to sail. So if you're really interested in any of these itineraries, reach out to your travel professional, to the cruise line, and see what options there might be available. And if not, 2024 itineraries are starting to come out already. All right, so say you find an itinerary that you love, it's at a price that you're like, this is great, we're gonna go for it, it's a once in a lifetime trip, let's do it. And then you start thinking to yourself, why a world cruise? What makes a world cruise special? Who goes on a world cruise? What should I expect? So a world cruise is definitely a special cruise. I mean, you have the fact that you're on board for an extended amount of time, much longer than you would on a normal cruise. You're traveling to typically 20, 30, 40 countries. Often you're going to 5 or 6 continents, and you're really exploring the world. So you have the cultural immersion aspect, you have the exploration aspect, and then because you're on the ship for so long, it really starts to feel like home. You're not, you don't get lost on board. People have their kind of patterns, and oh, at 10 o'clock, these people are going to be sitting by the Lido doing their Sudokus. And if I go sit out back, I could have brunch with these folks. And there's a lot of familiarity that comes with the passengers and the crew on board during these long voyages. The other part is that a lot of people, that's how they like to spend their winter. So I've met people that have been on, 18 or 19 world cruises. They go every single year. And so they really do treat it as their home away from home for, that chunk of time. Now, in addition to having the home away from home feel and a lot of familiarity with other guests that you might have seen on other cruises, and the crew that you were definitely going to get to know pretty well, is that it's not a normal voyage. The cruise line knows that they have these people there, and they're expecting something that's a little bit elevated. They're expecting something more. And so with this, there'll often be cultural ambassadors on board, whether that is, when you're down around New Zealand and they bring on native New Zealanders to teach you the haka dance. Or perhaps, when you're in Hawaii, they have Polynesian ambassadors that come on board to teach you a luau or how to play the ukulele. There's a lot of people that they'll bring on board throughout the voyage. And so those people will come on for a few weeks while you're exploring that region. They will often give talks as well as other, hula lessons or whatnot while they're on board. They're often just out interacting with the guests. And so that's a great opportunity for guests to be able to sit down and just have a nice long conversation with someone that's native to the places that they're exploring while they're on the ship. Now, in addition to these experiences, there are also typically more immersive shore excursions that happen. There's also something called overland tours that'll happen sometimes. So say you're sailing around Africa and you've always wanted to go on an African safari. You might not necessarily have enough time while you're in one specific port, but the cruise line will often organize tours that you'll disembark the ship in one port, you'll go with a representative from the cruise line as well as the other passengers, and then whoever your tour guide is, so they'll have the local tour guide. You'll go on a 3 or 4 night excursion. In this case, we're talking about an African safari, but wherever it is, and then you rejoin the ship a few days later. And so this allows you the opportunity when you're already in that region to go explore much more in depth in this particular area. So sometimes shore excursions are elevated just a little bit to be a little bit more culturally immersive, as well as the cultural ambassadors on board. And then there's also more gala nights, more theme nights, and more activities on board, slightly different activities on board. I've seen craft classes, watercolor, Zumba, a lot of variety as to what is offered on board, just to try to keep people engaged, learning new things while they are sailing around the world. All right, so there's a lot that goes on that helps make a world cruise special other than the cruise itself, but the cruise itself is pretty great. So who goes on world cruises? Is it just retired people? Is it just rich people? What are we looking at here? So it's all of those things and a million other things. So you'll have retired, there's a lot of retired people that can be away from home for months at a time, but it's not just the people that you would think of as uber wealthy. And they're not walking around in tuxedos with their Rolexes on and everything. It's a lot more casual and laid back than you might think based on the price tags that go with that. I don't know if that makes sense, but I've always been a little bit surprised by the very relaxed atmosphere amongst the guests on a world cruise. But I mean, you'll have retired school teachers and accountants, and then every once in a while you'll talk to someone that did investments for some random Swiss bank and all sorts of other stuff, and you're like, okay, I guess that makes sense. But then you'll have writers on board. Every once in a while you'll have some families that have decided to they're like, we need this once in a lifetime opportunity, so we're gonna go on this world cruise. We're taking our kids, we're going on an adventure. And so you have a bit of a mix. The demographic does tend to be older than a typical 1 or 2 week long cruise. That's just by the nature of who can have that much time away from a traditional work environment. I do think that as remote work is becoming more and more popular, maybe we'll see a demographic shift where younger people are opting to try to remote work while on the cruise. Some of these cruise lines are including Wi-Fi as a perk of sailing, which would then make it a little bit more of an option for someone to try to work remotely. If the cruise line does not include Wi-Fi and you don't opt to buy the package, internet is relatively expensive. So if you are someone that's thinking of working remotely while traveling on a world cruise, just be mindful that there's definitely going to be an internet expense. And as much as internet has come a long ways on ships, it is still not 100% reliable. So if you're sailing across the Indian Ocean, it's very possible that all of a sudden the internet's just down and the cruise line will work to fix it, but you're out in the middle of the ocean trying to deal with a satellite way up in the air. And so there are times, and it's always the least convenient time, the internet just goes down. Has come a long way, but just be mindful if you're thinking working remotely is an option for you. Just be aware of that. So the demographic is a little bit older on a world cruise, but it's still a fairly relaxed atmosphere, and people are super nice. There's still guests from past world cruises that I keep in touch with now. So I've always been pleasantly, it's not surprised anymore, but it's just always pleasant to be on a world cruise around these guests that they love cruising, they love traveling, seeing the world, and that's how they want to spend their time. All right, the first itinerary we're going to be looking at is on Costa. It's on the Costa Deliciosa. It is leaving in January of 2023 for 127 nights, so that has it returning in May. It is round trip from Venice, Italy, and it starts at $15,399 per person. Now, this particular itinerary, it's not a full circumnavigation, so it's not going to be going all the way around the world. It is round trip from Venice, so that part is a little more convenient if you're someone that likes to fly in and out of the same airport. So it's going to start out in Venice. It's going to explore a bit of the Mediterranean, then make its way down through the Suez Canal with a couple of stops, a stop in Egypt, a stop in Aqaba, Oman, as well as India, the Maldives, the Seychelles. So what it's doing is it's making its way, it goes down through the Suez Canal, and then it's going to make its way down around South Africa, including an overnight in Cape Town, South Africa. It's then going to cross the Southern Atlantic Ocean, make its way to South America in ports like Rio de Janeiro. It's going to explore South America pretty extensively. It's going to go down around Cape Horn and then back up the west coast of South America. We'll transit through the Panama Canal, explore a little bit of the east coast of the United States, cross the northern Atlantic, head back over to Europe, to the Mediterranean, and then end in Venice. So not a full circumnavigation, but pretty extensive in terms of South America as well as Africa, which is fun because a lot of times you don't see Africa on itineraries, although you do on a few of these, which is nice. Okay, the next world cruise that we're going to talk about is on Cunard. So Cunard is one of two companies that offers 2 world cruises each year. Now, one of Cunard's world cruises does a full circumnavigation and the other does a couple of continents exploration. So the first of the Cunard cruises that we're going to discuss is on the Queen Mary 2. It is not a full circumnavigation of the globe. And so if you're looking to go all the way around the world, this is not the one. However, it's still classified as a world cruise from Cunard's perspective, which means that you're still going to be getting certain extra theme nights, different perks while you're on board. And this is being offered round trip from New York City. It is heading out in January of 2023. You also have the option to sail round trip from Southampton. So if you are someone that's from the UK or somewhere in Europe, if Southampton's an easier port for you to get to, that is an option for you. This particular itinerary is going to start in New York. It's going to make its way across the North Atlantic to Southampton. Then it'll make its way across the Mediterranean, down through the Suez Canal. It'll have a couple of stops in the Middle East region, as well as Sri Lanka, and then it's going to head over to Asia. And it actually has a little more extensive Asia than you see on a lot of world cruise itineraries, which is nice, especially if that's a region that you've always wanted to go to but haven't been to before. So it's going to have stops in places like Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, Hong Kong, and Indonesia, before making its way south to Australia. And then when it goes to Australia, it's actually going to head down the east coast of Australia. So that's where you'd see the Great Barrier Reef, for instance. And then as it gets to the southern part of Australia, it's actually going to make its way west. And that's when you're going to be heading across the Indian Ocean towards Africa. You're going to be stopping in islands like Mauritius and Reunion before getting to South Africa, as well as stops in places like Namibia. After that, you'll make your way north to Spain, and then, of course, stopping in Southampton for any guests that are sailing Southampton road trip before crossing the Atlantic back to New York. The next world cruise we're going to talk about from Cunard is sailing on the Queen Victoria. It's going to be going round trip from Hamburg, Germany. There is also the option to sail round trip from Southampton for those that is more convenient for. This is leaving in January and is going to be a little over $19,000 per person, depending on the exchange rate. I've also seen on some websites that are advertised in US dollars, $21,000 to $22,000. So there is a little bit of variety. So depending on how you book it, you might see some slight price differences. All right, so this itinerary is going to start in Hamburg, head to Southampton, and then across the Atlantic to New York. It's going to have a couple stops in the Caribbean before heading through the Panama Canal. It's going to head up the west coast of Central America and Mexico, and then have a couple of stops on the west coast of the United States. It's going to head across the Pacific to Hawaii, sail through a bit of the South Pacific and Oceania region before stopping in New Zealand, Australia. There's a couple stops in the Philippines, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia. So this is also having a good little chunk of Asia in there for you. As well as Sri Lanka, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, Jordan. If you haven't ever been to Petra to go find the Holy Grail, you see that right there. I got that in Petra. We did not find the Holy Grail though, unfortunately. As well as transiting the Suez Canal, so making your way up back to the Mediterranean region, as well as some stops in Italy, Portugal, and then to Southampton, and back up to Hamburg. So that is the full circumnavigation on the Queen Victoria by Cunard. The next world cruise we're going to discuss is on Fred Olsen. So Fred Olsen is another UK-based cruise line. This is going to be on their ship, the Borealis, and it is the shortest of the world cruises. It is 80 days long. The concept is around the world in 80 days. So what you're going to see with this particular itinerary is not a lot of overnights. So World Cruises, one of the great things about World Cruises is you have more time to explore places more in depth. This particular cruise, as it's making its way all the way around the world in such a short amount of time, I know 80 days doesn't sound short, but for a world cruise, it's definitely on the shorter side of things. So you're not going to see as many overnights, but it's a great opportunity if you want to do a full circumnavigation of the globe, but you don't have quite as long. So this cruise is going to be sailing round trip from Southampton. It's offered at £13,499 per person, which translates to about $18,500. So it's actually it's right around that same price point that these other world cruises are starting at. This one's sailing in February, so it doesn't leave till February 23rd. The fact that it's a bit shorter gives it the option to be able to leave a little bit later in the winter. Okay, so this itinerary starts in Southampton. It's going to have a stop in Portugal, then makes its way into the Mediterranean. Like quite a few of these other world cruises, it's going to transit the Suez Canal. If you're on a world cruise, you'll notice that unless you're going around Africa or around South America, you have to go through either the Panama Canal or the Suez Canal. That's pretty much how you're getting from A to B. So most of these itineraries are going to include at least the Panama Canal or the Suez Canal, if not both. So if you are someone that finds those kind of engineering marvels interesting, then World Cruise could be for you. Okay, so makes its way down through the Suez Canal, has a few stops in India, as well as a bit in Asia. It has Singapore, Vietnam, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. Side note, if you are like me, US citizen, and you're planning on going ashore in places like Shanghai, or if you see places like China, on other places in China on an itinerary, make sure you get a Chinese visa. Otherwise, you can't go ashore. They are relatively expensive and slightly complicated to get, but I will leave a link for the visa service that I used to get my Chinese visa in the description of this video. Okay, you also go to Japan, including Tokyo, and then a bit of the Oceania region with countries like Samoa, as well as Hawaii, California, Mexico, Costa Rica. You're going to transit the Panama Canal, then go to Colombia in South America, as well as the Virgin Islands like St. Kitts, and then a stop in Portugal, and back to Southampton. Okay, so the MSC World Cruise, 118 nights out of Genoa. It is starting at $16,400 per person. It is a full circumnavigation, so it's going to start out in the Mediterranean, in Italy, then makes its way across the Atlantic Ocean. So this one is heading from east to west, so you're going to be getting those hour backs overnight. It explores a bit of the Caribbean area, transits the Panama Canal. It's going to make its way north up the coast, the west coast of Central America, Mexico, and then a little bit of the west coast of the United States. It's going to head across to Hawaii, explore some of the South Pacific and Oceania region, Australia. Then as it heads north from Australia, it's going to stop in Papua New Guinea, which is, you don't see that on itineraries very regularly, so that's a fun one for this particular itinerary. It also has stops in Japan, China, South Korea, Singapore, Malaysia, before making its way to the west with stops in Sri Lanka, United Arab Emirates, Oman, and then how is it going to make its way from the Middle East back to the Mediterranean where it started? The Suez Canal, you guessed it. So after it has its stop in Oman, also has a stop in Egypt, it's going to transit the Suez Canal, head north and return to Italy. The next world cruise we're going to be talking about is on P&O. P&O is a cruise line out of the UK primarily. They also have an Australian branch, but P&O Australia is something separate. So this is on their ship, the Arcadia. It is going to be 99 nights. So this is one of the shorter ones that's being offered. It's sailing on January 3rd out of Southampton. It's going to be a very busy week for Southampton. And it is a full circumnavigation. Prices start at a little under $15,000 per person. As it is a British cruise line, they are listed in pounds if you go on their website, which is 10,779 pounds, which translates to a little under $15,000. Okay, so this itinerary is starting in Southampton. It's going to this one's going from the east to west, so it's going to go Southampton, cross the Atlantic, make its way to the Bahamas, has a stop in Florida as well, before stopping in a couple places in the Caribbean, transiting the Panama Canal. Then it's going to stop in Mexico, Hawaii. Its South Pacific and Oceania is going to call in places like the Samoan Islands, Fiji, as well as New Zealand, Australia. And as it heads into Asia, it's going to have stops in Indonesia and the Philippines, as well as Hong Kong, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, United Arab Emirates, Oman, and then it's going to once again make its way through the Suez Canal. It's going to have a stop in Spain and then make its way back to Southampton. So this itinerary is a little similar to a couple of the other ones, but it's a good length at 99 nights, so it's not as long as some of the ones we're going to get towards in a minute. Okay, Princess Cruises is the other cruise line that typically offers 2 world cruises. They're offering it on their Island Princess and on their Coral Princess. However, they have a pretty strong hold in the Australian cruise market. They're known to have a ship sailing there pretty much year round. And so what they do, one of their world cruises operates on the Northern Hemisphere winter, so leaving in January. Then they also have a world cruise that goes in the Summer Hemisphere winter. So that world cruise leaves in June. And that one actually goes round trip from Sydney, Australia. So if you're from the Southern Hemisphere, or if you're just looking to cruise over the summer month, so if you're from the Southern Hemisphere, or if you're from the Northern Hemisphere, but looking for a cruise over your summer months / Southern Hemisphere winter months, this would be the cruise for you. It also has a great itinerary, which we're going to get into in just a second. So we're going to start out with the one that leaves in January. This is on the Island Princess. It is round trip out of Los Angeles. It is 111 nights and starts out at $22,000 per person. So starting in Los Angeles, you're going to start by heading across the Pacific to Hawaii. After spending a few days in Hawaii, you're going to make your way down to the South Pacific region, see a few different islands there, head across to New Zealand, Australia. You're going to stop in Komodo Island, which is in Indonesia, where the Komodo dragons are, as well as Malaysia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Jordan to look for that Holy Grail, as well as Egypt, Israel. That one is not on many of the itineraries that you see. And then, once again, you're heading up through the Suez Canal to get to the Mediterranean. Now, this particular itinerary has 10 or 15 stops in the Mediterranean. So you are getting to see Greek islands, you're stopping in Italy, you have a stop in Turkey, you're stopping in France and Spain, Portugal. There's a lot of the Mediterranean. So this is a great itinerary if you are wanting to get a good taste of that. And you're going to be going to the Mediterranean not in the heat of the summer and when it's super busy. So I think it's going to be a great time of year to be in that region and explore. All right, so after the Mediterranean, you're going to make your way across the Atlantic through Central America. So a few stops in the Central American region, through the Panama Canal, make your way up the west coast of Central America and Mexico, and back to Los Angeles. Okay, the other Princess Cruises itinerary for the World Cruise is on the Coral Princess, and this is the one that leaves round trip out of Sydney, Australia. It is about $23,000 per person. It's leaving in June and gets back in September. It's 107 days, and this itinerary, because it's heading in the Northern Hemisphere summer, you'll notice it's going to explore some of Northern Europe, Iceland, Greenland, as well as like Nova Scotia. So I think it's pretty cool. You don't see, Iceland and Greenland on a lot of world cruise itineraries. Okay, so you're starting in Sydney, so you're already down under. Apologies for the accent. My accents in general are terrible. Okay, so starting in Australia, you have a couple stops in Australia. Then you are going to Komodo Island, gonna go see those dragons. Continuing north to Singapore. I haven't completely verified this, but I think Singapore is the only port that's on every single world cruise, which is a great city. Super fun. If you haven't been to Singapore, it's a good time. Lots to see there. And anyway, so Singapore, then to Sri Lanka, Oman. I don't know if you've been to Oman. There's some really pretty mosques there. There's also a great market. It's not as big as like the Grand Bazaar in Turkey. It's not that big of a market, but there's a nice market that's right downtown, right where the shuttle bus from the ship will drop you off. So, okay, then you go to the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, go through that Suez Canal. You're gonna head to Greece and Italy, France, Spain, Morocco, Portugal. Then this is where the more northern part of Europe exploration comes in. So you've got Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Ireland, England, Iceland, Greenland, Canada. You've got an overnight in New York City, as well as a transit of the Panama Canal, stops in Ecuador, Peru, Chile, and then a bit of exploration in French Polynesia before stopping in New Zealand and then heading back to Australia. So this itinerary, I think it's great that Princess offers this for the lovely cruisers of the Southern Hemisphere, but I think it would be a great itinerary for anyone. All right, so that does it for currently offered world cruises for 2023 in the contemporary or mainstream cruise category. Now, one that you might be wondering is missing is Holland America Line. So Holland America Line typically offers a world cruise every year. They have not announced final plans for their 2023 world cruise. However, they have announced that it's going to be on a different class of ship than has been offered. So it's getting moved from their R-class ship from the Zaandam to the Vista-class ship, the Zuiderdam. So it's expected that there's going to be information on the Holland America Line 2023 world cruise in the coming months. However, it has not been announced yet. Okay, so most of the world cruises that we have talked about so far are relatively affordable. They range from, $15,000 to $23,000 per person, but we're now going to move into what's considered the luxury cruise lines that are offering world cruises. So the luxury brands that are offering world cruises, the price point is much higher. However, it might include something like business class airfare or shore excursions. It might include alcoholic drinks on board or specialty restaurants. So there's a lot of different inclusions that are coming in with these different price points. Additionally, many of these luxury lines, their cabins on board are either only suites. They might not have inside cabins. They might, they might only have balconies and higher. Some of these are suites only. So the lowest category stateroom that you can have is still going to have double granite vanity with a separate tub and shower and marble floors in its bathroom. So yeah, there's a reason it's at a slightly different price point. Okay, starting off, we have Crystal Cruises. So Crystal Cruises is going to be offering a 140-night world cruise on the Crystal Serenity. It is going to be sailing from Miami to Athens. So this is not a full circumnavigation. It'll start in Miami and it'll head to the west, making its way eventually to Athens. Now, if you notice, it's 140 nights and it's not a full circumnavigation. So that means that there's a lot of ports and a lot of those ports have overnights. Now, the price point, the starting price on this particular itinerary is $58,000 per person. So like I said, it's a very different price point, but it also has more things included. I will leave links to some of those inclusions and information on that in the description of this video, as those do change over time. Some of them are perks if you book by a certain date. If you book early, then you might get additional perks as well. Okay, so this itinerary, so it's starting in Miami. It's going to explore some of the Caribbean, then transit the Panama Canal, including an overnight in Panama City, which is, you don't see that on a lot of itineraries. A lot of itineraries, you're just going through the canal just to get through and continue on your way. So this gives you a chance to explore Panama City, as well as Ecuador, Peru. It's going to have a stop in Easter Island, so you can go see those statues there. It's going to explore French Polynesia, as well as some more of Oceania, including the Cook Islands, Tonga, Fiji, New Caledonia. It's also going to have stops in Australia, the Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and its stops in Indonesia include Komodo Island to go look at those dragons, as well as an overnight in Bali, and a stop in Semarang to go see the temple in the Temple of Borobudur. And I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Also has a stop in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Myanmar, India, Sri Lanka, the Maldives. So this is when it's making its way from, so it had a little bit of exploration in Asia, heading across the Indian Ocean. That's where the stops in India and Sri Lanka are. And now it's making its way to the African continent. So Seychelles, Tanzania, Kenya, then it's going to make its way to the Middle East with Oman, Jordan, and Egypt through the Suez Canal, which makes sense. It's ending in Athens, so it's got to head towards the Mediterranean. But after the Suez Canal transit, it includes stops in Turkey, Greece, Italy, Croatia, Slovenia, Montenegro, Monaco, France, Spain, and then to Athens. So it actually has a pretty extensive Mediterranean exploration before disembarking. The next world cruise itinerary we're going to talk about is the granddaddy of world cruise itineraries. It is the 180-night world cruise offered on Oceania. Now, I haven't ever sailed on Oceania, so I can't talk to the onboard experience, but I can tell you this itinerary is insane. It's so good. Okay, so it's 180 days. It is on the Insignia. It's round trip out of San Francisco. Starts at $42,000 per person, which, considering it's 180 nights, I mean, I don't have the pocket change for it, but if you do, it's a great itinerary. Okay, so it's a full circumnavigation. It's heading out in January, and round trip out of San Francisco. So from San Francisco, it's going to head south to Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Ecuador. So we're not going right through the Panama Canal. We're actually making our way down south along South America. Additionally, we're going to explore Chile, Argentina, Antarctica, the Falkland Islands, go see those penguins, Uruguay, Argentina, so now we're heading north along the east coast of South America, Brazil, the Ivory Coast, Ghana, so we've crossed the Atlantic, we're now in Africa, Namibia, South Africa, Mozambique, French Comoros, Madagascar, the Seychelles. Okay, now we're getting into the Middle East region with Oman, United Arab Emirates, making our way across the Indian Ocean to India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, China, Japan, Russia. Did you know? Okay, let's just think about this for a second. I just said Russia after Japan. So that means that you're making your way far enough north in Asia to go from Japan to the eastern side of Russia. So cool. And then, because this is a 180-night world cruise, from Russia, it's actually going to head across to Alaska. And so you don't see Alaska on a world cruise itinerary hardly ever, because typically world cruises are ending in early May, late April, early May, which is usually a little earlier than you'd start the Alaskan cruise season. But this one is not in that case. This cruise ends in July, so it's heading to Alaska before making its way down, has a stop in British Columbia, as well as Oregon, and then back to San Francisco. Now, as I was just talking through this, I'm sure you realized that this particular cruise is heading from west to east instead of east to west. I think it makes sense on this itinerary because it allows you to have that Alaskan exploration at the end of the itinerary, whereas otherwise, if you went from east to west, so from San Francisco, and then explored that and went across the Pacific, it would be hard for you to get that Alaskan exploration on the other side. Plus, it's a 180-night world cruise, so I don't think that the hour forwards are going to impact you that much. They'll make sure that they're happening, you know, in a logical, well-spaced out way for the guests. Yeah, so awesome itinerary. I hope lots of people enjoy it. Unfortunately, not me, but lots of people will. Okay, the next world cruise that we're going to discuss is on Regent Seven Seas. It's on the Seven Seas Mariner. This is not a full circumnavigation, so this one is heading from Miami to Barcelona. So a couple of these world cruises you'll notice are starting in the Florida region and then ending up somewhere in the Mediterranean or in Europe, and basically are ending in Europe and then continuing on. These ships will have a European summer season. So from a logistical standpoint, moving ships around the world makes sense. This is 143 nights. It's starting in January and it'll end in Barcelona on May 30th. As I said, it's not a full circumnavigation, but that's okay. I think this one actually includes airfare, so they'll fly you home. Perfect. It starts at $58,000 per person. Once again, I'll leave links in the description of the video so you can understand a little bit more of what's included within this fare. It does have quite a few overnights, quite a few interesting and different stops to it. Okay, so this itinerary is starting in Miami. It's going to head down, transit through the Panama Canal, then do a bit of the northern part, the northwest part of South America. So basically making its way down towards Peru, heading across the Pacific to the east to Easter Island, the South Pacific Oceania region, stop in Papua New Guinea, Australia, as well as Indonesia, Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Singapore. So pretty extensive on the Asian continent or the Asian region. Then it's going to make its way across the Indian Ocean to Sri Lanka, India, the Maldives, as well as Oman, the Seychelles, and then it explores quite a bit of Africa. So often what we've seen is the cruises come across the Indian Ocean and then go through the Suez Canal to get to the Mediterranean. This particular voyage is heading around Africa and making its way up to Barcelona. So for African exploration, you're going to be stopping in Madagascar, the French Comoros, Mozambique, South Africa, Namibia, Senegal, the Canary Islands, and then Morocco before ending in Spain. So definitely a very interesting itinerary. And it's on Regent Seven Seas, which I've heard nothing but good things about. So the next world cruise is also from Miami to Barcelona, but it is not the same cruise. They are going on different itineraries. This one is 140 nights. It leaves on January 6th. It is on Seabourn and on their ship, the Seabourn Sojourn. So that particular itinerary starts at $63,000 per person. I unfortunately won't be there. Maybe they'll hire me. Seabourn, do you want to hire me? I'll come work for you on your world cruise. And this itinerary, so it starts in Miami. It's going to stop in Key West, then make its way to a bit of the Caribbean and Central American region. So you've got Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, transiting the Panama Canal. You also have a stop in Panama, Ecuador, Peru, and then heading across the Pacific towards Easter Island, and a stop on Easter Island. You're going to explore French Polynesia. So after being in French Polynesia, it's going to explore the Oceania region a bit more with places like the Cook Islands, Tonga, Fiji, Vanuatu, the Solomon Islands, and it's making its way more towards Asia with Papua New Guinea. And then we're going to head to Australia. And this is going to include Western Australia as well, which a lot of times you'll see that that cruises are heading up the east coast of Australia to go through the Great Barrier Reef region, so people can stop there. But a lot of times the western part of Australia gets missed. So this itinerary includes some Western Australia. It's also going to stop in Indonesia, the Seychelles, and Kenya. So we will have crossed the Indian Ocean. Tanzania, South Africa, Namibia, Benin, Ghana, Togo, Gambia, Senegal, Cape Verde, the Canary Islands, Morocco, and then Spain. So it's not the same itinerary as the Regent Seven Seas. There's definitely a lot of similarities, but they're both going to be incredible. They're on two great cruise lines. Okay, the next itinerary we're going to talk about is an interesting one. It's not a full circumnavigation. It's actually starting out in Sydney, Australia, and ending in Fort Lauderdale. It leaves in January, and so it's making its way from Australia to Florida. It is 140 nights, and I don't actually have a price for this one. It is sold out, but it does say that there's a wait list available. It is on, it's with Silversea, and it is on their ship, the Silver Shadow. Okay, so this itinerary is starting in Australia. It's also going to explore Tasmania, New Zealand, Vanuatu, Papua New Guinea, Palau, the Philippines, Hong Kong. So we've made our way from Australia and the Oceania region. We're heading north towards Asia, with stops in Philippines, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, the Maldives. So we're making our way across the Indian Ocean towards Africa, Seychelles, Tanzania, Madagascar, Mauritius, Reunion, South Africa, Namibia, Angola, Ghana, the Ivory Coast, Gambia, Senegal, Cape Verde, Brazil. Okay, so we've made our way across the Atlantic. Now we're in South America. French Guiana, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So this is how we're making our way to Florida. We're up in the Caribbean now. And Antigua and Barbuda, St. Barthélemy, and Puerto Rico. Apologize for pronunciation on any of that. Then Puerto Rico, and then up to Fort Lauderdale. So this one is going a little bit of a different direction than most do, just because it's starting in Australia and making its way north to Fort Lauderdale, but it's on Silversea. Silversea is renowned for being an incredible experience. This is also the ship, I think, with the smallest number of passengers, only 388 passengers. To give you a little comparison, the Seabourn Sojourn holds 450, then Regent Seven Seas holds 700, so I think that the Silversea might be the smallest ship. Okay. Next up, we have Viking. So Viking is offering a world cruise on their ship, the Viking Neptune. This particular itinerary is 138 days and technically leaves in 2022. It is leaving, so December 22nd, and it will return on May 9th. This is not a full circumnavigation. It is leaving from Fort Lauderdale and ending in London. This is starting out at about $55,000 per person, and it is currently sold out. I have been told that Viking does not do a wait list, so if you are interested, you need to just call back and check in periodically to see if it's available. Also of note, all staterooms on board the Viking Neptune have a veranda, so every single stateroom will at least have a veranda. Okay, so this isn't a full circumnavigation. You're starting in Fort Lauderdale, you're ending in London, you are making your way around the world from the east to the west. Okay, so this itinerary is actually the one itinerary that doesn't include Singapore. Sorry. And so anyways, it's not a full circumnavigation. It's starting in Florida. It's ending in London. It's going to, from Florida, head to Mexico and Colombia before crossing through the Panama Canal. It will go to Costa Rica, Nicaragua, as well as Hawaii. And then after Hawaii, it's going to head south to the South Pacific region and explore some French Polynesia, as well as New Zealand, and then Tasmania and Australia before heading towards Asia with stops in Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, Myanmar. It's going to make its way across the Indian Ocean to Sri Lanka and India, as well as stops in Oman, Jordan, Egypt. It's going to transit the Suez Canal, stops in Turkey, Greece, Italy, France, Monaco, Spain, Portugal, more France, and England, which obviously is where the ship will be stopping. All right, so there you have it. Those are the world cruises that have been advertised so far for 2023. I would expect there's going to be at least one from Holland America Line, and Silversea is trying out an expedition ship for a world cruise in 2022. So there is potential that we might see something from them for 2023. I think world cruises are great. I have loved doing longer cruises and being able to explore the world while being able, it's not having to pack and unpack to be able to see, 30 or 40 countries is incredible. You just wake up in the morning and you get to go to a whole new continent, explore a new country, and it's incredible. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope that at least some of you go and explore the world. And yeah, maybe I'll see you there. If not, another cruise. But if you like this video, if you found it helpful, please hit like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. There's a lot more to find on the blog, lifeofiris.com. Hope you all have a great day. I hope to see you on a cruise sometime, maybe even a world cruise. And thanks. Have a good one.